Okay, let's go. We haven't got any members of the public, so we can skip over that bit. We have apologies from Jason. Do we have them from anybody else, Liz?
No.
Any personal or financial interest to declare?
No, not me.
Any written applications?
No.
Any officers' interests?
No.
Anything we feel should be discussed in private?
I think I ought to declare my connection with the Friends of Fondley Library being a trustee.
Oh, right. And I
That-
should, yeah, I should declare mine as well, because I would. Kath?
Yeah, I need to declare Civic Trust.
Righto. Is there anything anybody feels should be discussed in private? It didn't seem to me there was. No. Are we happy with the minutes of the last meeting?
Pat, can I just question one thing, which maybe just how I remember it? But there was an item 37 on the minutes where it talks about the public toilets and the tenant. I know we had a discussion about the tenant, but I didn't think we resolved as such that a cafe wouldn't be suitable in principle, which is what it says. I didn't think we'd said that. I know we'd said we weren't going to change the configuration, but I may be wrong. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I didn't think we did, because it says in there, the committee is not minded to have a cafe outlet at the location as there are so many in Home First already. I didn't recall that we made that as a...
Isn't that the meeting before the last one?
No, it was the last meeting that.
Oh. Right.
My
My memory is that we said we didn't want. In fact, my memory is that you said it, but I think I might be wrong. Judith.
It was a cafe that we had talked previously about having a tenant who was a cafe. It's just it fell through. So it seems a bit odd for us to then say we definitely wouldn't have a cafe.
Okay.
I think from the start we've never ruled out categories.
Okay.
Waiting to see what tenants were available, and we had the opportunity to then
Okay.
whether they were appropriate.
Can we delete that, Liz? Liz?
Yeah.
Judith?
The toilets, I don't think we would be allowed to be able to do that, because on the terms of the agreement of when we took it on, we could only alter a certain percentage, and I think what we've done already has almost taken that all up, if not more. So I don't think we will be able to change anything else into anything other than the toilets.
Right. Thank you. Sean?
That is on the terms of agreement for those that have looked at them.
Right. Thank
I
you.
understand is that we could go back and renegotiate that though if you wanted to.
Yeah.
That's the question.
Didn't we talk about there's like a bit of space, isn't there, between the toilets and making part of the gents and the Monty's Loft bit, looking at whether or not it might be worth having some kind of like hatch where you could buy coffee and tea, but I think we didn't get beyond that, did we? I don't know whether I can't remember.
I think we just decided that this wasn't the time to be looking at apportioning parts, so we've just left it for now.
Yeah, I think we decided we'd just look at the door.
Yeah.
They could sort their own heating. We'd look at the door with them, and that was more or less all we were going to do for the time being, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Are you all happy with that?
Yeah.
As a record of what we agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, that brings us on to looking at the list, which is in your expressions of interest. The Councillor Bellamy and myself with the clerk and Councillor Hogley met, and we discussed all but the last three of these, and we have some recommendations to make in terms of what we support and how. As a general principle, we felt that unless there was a good reason, and we weren't even going to think about defining what a good reason would be, that we would say we'll give no more than 5,000 to as many people as we can, rather than very large amount to a smaller number of people. As I say, there could be exceptions, there could be emergencies, but that, as a general principle, was the one we felt was sensible of a way to spend our budget. Are you wanting to speak or just waving hello?
Waving
Dogs.
hello.
All right.
I was just saying my internet's really unstable. I just got booted
Right,
off. And just come
okay.
back.
So
right.
that was one principle we looked at. And then many of the applications were for a long list of things. And our feeling, well, not our feeling, our thinking was that we should prioritise things that benefit the community. So, for instance, additional usage for a sports club, you know, things that benefit the community, and things that are climate sensitive.
Oh, good.
So if you're choosing between giving somebody a covered outdoor area or increasing their lagging in the roof, you would prioritise the lagging in the roof. Just that sort of decision, by and large, where there are decisions to be made about they want this much, we can only give them that much, let's give it for that use, not for this use. Those were the discussions we had. Now, do people want to discuss that before we move on to the individual expressions of interest? Just before we move on to the expressions of interest, we don't have to get into the detail of them because they're not formal applications, they're only expressions of interest. They're for us talking about the next year's budget, really, not this one. So it'll be general principles. But does anybody have any comments to make on those general principles I've just outlined before we look at the expressions of interest? Doug's and Judith.
I missed the first part of what you said, but one of the things that I guess I think is a principle we need to have a view on. At the end of the last meeting, we got another application from a school, and there was advice, I think, from the clerk that we can now actually fund schools if we choose to. I think it would be helpful for us to have a position where we don't fund schools, because I just think there's far too many community projects in the area to support as it is without extending that offer to something which is effectively part of the public purse and funded directly by the government anyway. So, and I think that would, my worry is if we do start to fund schools, then you're going to get all the other schools are going to see that there's an opportunity there, and then we'll have a lot of demand that we just can't begin to meet. So I think it would be cleaner to have a general view, not a general view, a specific view, that unless it was very clearly a community facility that happened to be in a school, that we wouldn't consider them.
I think you'll see when we come to the individual applications, that's exactly what we've done. If there isn't a community benefit, our thinking has been to say no.
And can I just say
Judith, you had your hand up. Judith?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Well, I actually think what we ought to do is possibly look first to see how much they have in their reserves who have asked us, because some of the groups that the cricket clubs and various other clubs that are there, they have quite a tidy item in their reserves, and they also charge people for being a member of that particular club, which there's nothing wrong in that, of course, but I think we just have to be careful that we aren't giving money to just a select membership, because that also would not be part of the requirement, really, because it as far as I was under the impression that the community means the community for anybody to be able to use. And if it's a club like a football club or a cricket club or a tennis club or something like that, then it's a membership and use it not as a member of the public per se, but only as a member.
Yeah, thank you. So shall we move on to the table that Liz did for us?
Can I, sorry, Pat, can I just
Meeting.
mention something? I know you said that £5,000 was the suggested upper limit, which is fine, but I just wonder if we reach the end of reviewing the list, and then when we have our budget discussions, we find that we don't feel we'll have the budget to support that, we could revisit that upper limit and, if necessary, reduce it slightly to say £4,000.
Well, yes,
If we felt that we should do that, that's the problem.
I've spent this afternoon looking at budgets, and what we, in our informal meeting with Kath, looked at approving, and we go over Rich's summary, not massively, but we go over the RFO summary. So it's something, I mean, we could go through the list, we could say provisionally what we've said, then we could look at our total expenditure and revisit it. Judith?
Can I just say that last year we had a particular club that we allocated quite a substantial amount of money to. And when I actually looked at all the what they required it for, one of it was for some handrails and some fencing outside. Now, I've been down on several occasions, haven't found that fencing as yet, but they did put some fancy balustrading up inside the club, which was glass, and that was at quite a substantial price. So did we actually fund that as opposed to going outside? Because I can't see anything outside any different to what it was before we allocated this money to them.
My memory says, and I might be misremembering, that they wrote us a thank you letter and sent us photographs of what they'd done, and we were quite pleased with them. Am I right in remembering that?
Yes.
So I think we did see we did see the things we thought we'd given the money for. They provided us with the evidence quite some time ago now.
Mm. I know that part of it was something to do with the toilets, which were, can I just say, extremely palatial.
Well, I must remember to go and use them. Okay, shall we move on to the individual, to the things? And as I say, we don't have to get into the details of these, because these are expressions of interest rather than formal applications. The first one on the list is Brockholes Village Hall. And we were minded in our informal meeting, given that we've just said we will put a ceiling unless there's an exception of £5,000, to give them 5,000, which was for the windows. Has anybody got any comment on that? No? Are you happy with that? We won't vote on it until we come to adding up the totals, because as Rachel said, we might go back and knock some off if we find we're over what we want to ask for.
Well, can I just say that a village hall is used by the village per se?
Yeah, that's why we approved it, because it's a community asset.
It's a community asset, is that?
Yeah.
To me, that should be supported.
Yeah, we are supporting it. We're recommending giving them £5,000 for the windows, not everything else they're asking for, which is a total of £21,000. As I said, I think we've just agreed the general principle of saying we'll give them 5,000 and no more, unless there's a real reason. And you agreed that principle. So we're saying we're giving them 5,000 and we want it spent on the roof, on the windows, rather than the other things they list. You mute. You mute.
Sorry, I dropped off again. My question is, are these recommendations for next year's budget, 2020,
Yes.
21, 22?
Yeah.
And obviously that in some ways is influenced by if we put in a request to take any money out of reserves or increase the budget. But you're
Yes.
just going through because this year
I'm
money's
going
completely
through.
spent, isn't it?
It's quite neat because we've had quite a lot of expressions of interest, and the amount that we're wanting to give them is not a million miles away from the amount we've got.
That's what I thought, yeah. But
So
obviously we could get further requests.
So we can go through these, look at what we've got. There are a couple we felt we shouldn't give them to. I think one of them was a school, and you know, and then we can come at the end. I did some sums this afternoon, and unfortunately I did them too late to circulate to you, but I can circulate them after the meeting and I can read them out to you now.
Yeah.
The next
I
one,
could see they were very close, Pat. So yeah.
the
Okay.
next one was Honley Village Trust, which was for the village hall roof, and on the same grounds as you said, Judith, we recommended giving them £5,000 towards that
What was that for, please?
to repair the roof of Honley Village Hall.
Pat, can I just
Yeah.
ask you a question? Is the intention after this meeting to then go back to the people who gave the expressions of interest and give them our current view that if they apply for say in this instance, the replacement of their village hall roof, recognising there's a limit of £5,000 an application, for the next financial year, we would look at it favourably. But presumably for ones where we've maybe decided, maybe we haven't got to yet, well, ones we won't support, say, you know, the committee's reviewed the application and, you know, regrettably, we don't, within the budgets that we are able to spend or raise.
It's a good, it's a good question. I mean, we may have to be careful because we don't know what else is going to crop up between now and next financial year, do we? I mean, I know the next financial year isn't far away, but we could certainly confidently tell people we're not going to give money to, and I suppose we could say to the others, you are still being positively considered. We could, Tom.
Yeah, I kind of see this as more of a draft to help with the budget. So we can have a target of how much money we want for the budget for the grants for next year. And then we've got this draft document saying we've got this amount assigned for this, this amount assigned for that. And it may be that we have some money left over at the end as well, contingency. I don't know. I kind of see this as a draft. And then when the grants come in, we will look at this and we will think, oh, when we did our budget, we budgeted 4,000 for this, 5,000 for this, and so we're making sure that we're not going to overspend and miss out on the other groups.
Yeah, I mean, actually, now I think about it, Rachel, nobody's actually applied. They've sent in an expression of interest. So we can't reply and say, yes, we're granting it. What we can do is write back to the people we're looking at favourably and say, you now need formally, it's the new financial year, you need to submit a formal application. And, you know, and they may want to come and talk about their application and things like that.
I'm just conscious we would benefit from giving them a steer on what they should apply for. Because what we don't want to find is Brockhall's Village Hall, for example, come forward and ask for whatever it is.
Yeah, for the LED lighting. We need
and chairs, and we say, no, we're not going to give you that. But if you'd come and ask for the roof or the windows or whatever, then yeah, you would have been successful. But bad luck next time. Good luck next time.
Yeah, we're going to
once again,
I will have to give that some thought about what we say to whom and how to get the right kind of application back.
I mean, we can steer people towards what you were saying earlier about, you know, we are going to prioritise things that support climate emergency, so energy efficiency projects, for example, or things that genuinely support the wider community, not just your membership, to address what Councillor Roberts was mentioning earlier, and something about, you know, accessibility or something like that.
Right, Mary.
I think it's important to let those groups know that it looks as though we're unlikely to fund them at all, because they need to be looking elsewhere for funding. So in a sense, this is turning into almost like a two-stage application that,
Yeah.
you know, that some people will successfully and go through to the next stage, as it were, and others won't. But we need to be, we need to let the ones that are failing, dropping at this stage, know as soon as possible.
Yeah. And then I think if I have a conversation with Liz and circulate to you all a form of wording, and it might be that every response is individually tailored. I mean, it means 15 different letters, but it may be, you say to Brockholes Village Hall, we want it to fulfill this criterion and this criterion, and by the way, the windows do that. You know, we would be favourably disposed to things like windows, or we just tell, I mean, we write a letter and we ring them up. I don't know how we get around it. Judith, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Well, once again, this is a village hall. This is a community village hall.
Yes.
And whilst we I would like us to be supportive of community village halls, we can't disregard it just because it doesn't fit the criteria for this climate emergency, because we could say that we could support them for so much money, and anything that's needed within the climate emergency could be, maybe they could make inquiries via HOPS, because that is the one that's to do with all the, you know, what they're going to give in from HOPS, like a certain amount of insulation and various other things. So maybe they could be, you know, minded to be asked for if there's anything else within the community that would furnish them some help with regards, if we give them some money for windows or a roof, that in actual fact the other bit, so that it could be a joint force.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, as it is, we're minded to offer them the maximum amount we've set to give to anybody. And I think your point is well made, that, you know, have you thought about A, B and C to talk to as well? Sean, you put your hand up.
Yeah. I know they've suggested that they might need some help towards funding a youth worker. Did they say specifically, you know, what sort of time frame they were thinking in terms of that? Because that, for me, that feels like a really...
No, but we, well, as a... Kath and Rachel and I, we can't...
don't put wages.
Excuse me, I'm speaking. We don't pay wages, Sean.
Okay.
Rachel?
I was just going to comment that the whole youth group leader element is being picked up by a service provision committee, because it would be a service rather than So
I mean, it's been sympathetically received, but CASC can't sympathetically receive it.
So does the Village Trust know if, are we going to say, well, maybe you want to think about applying to service provision or finance and management or whatever? Will they be given that advice?
Well, I'm currently emailing them an email exchange about it and trying to get more information so that it can be fed into service provision.
Okay.
So, Homeforth Tech, we were minded, there was a long list of things that they're having to spend. Judith?
Sorry, you wanted me, with regards to what Sean was saying about wage, we've never funded wages, not to my knowledge.
That's right. That's right.
So we can't be, you know, if somebody's saying they want so many hours at such and such a price, and they want some money towards that, we can't do that, because that, well, as far as I know, we can't do that because we've never funded wages. And I don't think it's something that we should take on board now, because it can create, you know, open up a minefield and that.
Thank you. I think we're agreed on that, Judith. Moving on to Homeforth Tech, there's a long list of things they need and want to do. We singled out, we felt rather than the full 5,000, we give them 3,000, and it would be for the access lift. for the disabled access. Any objections, comments, fears, concerns? Okay.
Well, can I just ask how on earth have they managed to run so far without a disabled access?
Well, they've probably been running illegally.
Because that would be part of their insurance, surely, that, or the workings that they would require a disabled access.
It may be that they're upgrading it. I can't remember the ins and outs. As I say, these are not detailed applications. These are expressions of interest, and they are our broad intention for the next year. Tom, then Rachel.
Yeah, Holmfirth Library doesn't currently have a working lift, so I don't know how they get around it, but they may just have to provide the provision for disabled people on the ground floor at the moment. So, but instead in future, they will be able to provide it on the other floors or give them access to it with the lifts fixed. But they haven't owned the building for very long, so give them a chance, Judith, to get these things fixed and in order.
No, I'm not disputing that, but in order for, you know, it's supposedly a building like we have where we are now. And I mean, we've made all these provisions for a fire escape, which, you know, which we're putting into requirements for this next time if they go back to using the civic hall. But I mean, when they took on this building, they did certainly know the situation as to what it was like inside. I'm sure they must have done. And over the year, we've given them quite a substantial amount of money, really. And I mean, whilst I'm wholeheartedly thinking that we should give for disabled access, because a lot of people could possibly benefit from going to the technical college who are disabled, then my concern is why has it not been part of the what they were doing beforehand to enable that to happen? Because we've had it nearly about 12 months now, and I know we've been on a lot of lockdown, and which has made it difficult. But, you know, these things have to be put in place sometimes before they will allow places to open.
Yeah, I don't think any of us knows the answer to that. I don't think it should stop us approving this money for their lift. Rachel, then Doug's.
Sorry, Tom's covered it. Sorry.
Right, Doug's.
I think if you look at their wish list, obviously they've managed to raise enough money to put effectively a down payment on this building. They by no means own the whole building. They haven't raised enough money for that. And what they've got is a whole load of refurbishments that they think are needed, which, as you can see on there, comes to many, many thousands. So I think in principle, you know, they could be asked to apply to us, and we could say these are the elements that we're minded to fund, because we may be more interested in the disabled access, for example, than the soundproof music room for 22,000. But I don't think when you think of the significance of the asset in the town, I don't think £3,000 is a unreasonable amount for us to ring fence up.
I'm very mindful of time here. We've got another 12 or 13 of these to look at. Then we want to discuss next year's budget and what it all comes to. And as I say, these aren't deep. I mean, we are not approving a formal application here. We're looking at a broad thought. So if we can move on to Upper Thong Village Hall, where we were minded, they wanted several things, and we were minded to give them 3,350 towards the damp-proof course and the roof insulation. Are there problems, difficulties? I mean, other than just general comments, anything that needs to be raised as opposed to interesting to talk about on that? No? Okay.
Well, I think I just said that the roof actually, I seem to think the roof has been turned at some point or other, because there was quite a lot of pilfering of the slates at one point. And I thought the roof had been turned, and if the roof has been turned, it will have had some form of underfelting put on. I mean, it's a stone slate roof, is the Upper Thong Village Hall, of which they had quite a lot of it stolen at one part. But if it's been turned, then surely to goodness, whoever's turned it will have put some sort of felting on of some description, underneath. I'm not saying that they'll have put any insulation on, but they'll have put a felting on, which it shouldn't need replacing again so soon.
Well, it clearly does, because they've made an application and we feel we should give them 3,500 and refer them to the lighting, because they want to do some lighting, to go to the Bright Green Energy Trust. And we would consider giving them some more money next year if they were to need it, I mean, the year after. So obviously they do need it. I mean, they wouldn't just be making it up, I don't suppose. The next one is Honley Cricket Club, and it was all cricket equipment, all of which is admirable, and they do have a lot of youth clubs, but we were minded not to give them anything because it wasn't really community. Rachel, you've got your hand up.
I was just going to say, didn't this come up at F&M?
I think it did.
And we gave them a token amount because we regarded it as sporting facilities. I know there was then some toing and froing of emails with on
Yeah.
the size.
I mean, we were certain, we felt we shouldn't give them any of the cask budget, and I think finance and management gave them, I don't know, £500 or something, a small amount.
200.
200. Then we come to Homebridge Cricket Club, and for the same reasons, we weren't minded to give them. They were asking for money for their floodlights, and that's just cricket rather than community, and we were inclined not to. Then Home Firth Bowling Club, where they were wanting to, money towards the toilet block, and again there was no indication that there was any community use here, so we were minded not to give them any money. Then we came to the Friends of Netherthong Primary School, and this, Dogs, is where we come to your point, because what they were wanting was a broader, it wasn't just for the school, it was a broader, you know, a running track that the community could use, and we were minded to give them 5,000 as long as there's public access, and that would be a provision of grant. The next one was Honley People's Recreation, was money towards an outdoor gym.
Chair.
Yes?
Doug's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Doug.
I thought Tom had as well.
Sorry.
I don't know how to say this nicely. I'm always, having dealt with a lot of grants from the council and seeing a lot of schools saying things to community facilities, a lot of schools have built massive fences around them with big locks to stop people getting in, because Ofsted were obsessed with child protection for many years. So I'd want to, I mean, obviously they haven't applied formally yet.
Yeah.
But I'd want active evidence that they were not only opening the door once the flood, they're actually encouraging people to use it.
I think you're right. I think what we could do in our letter, if each of these letters is going to be differently detailed, then we would say we will want to see the details of how how and when. I mean, they might say we can't do it during the day, but it can be open at night. I don't know.
Yeah.
We want to see evidence anyway.
I've already asked them that question, and they said it is open to the public, and I gather that the grounds are anyway open to the public. There aren't any high walls or anything.
Yeah. Well, when they do the formal application, we can ask them to provide evidence of that. Tom, did you have your hand up? Doug thought you had.
Yeah, I did do. I was just kind of thinking, like a lot of these schools now, they do like a daily mile, don't they, with the kids? So the kids will like run a mile or walk a mile every day. And it helps with their education, just using up their energy, getting out and doing these things. And a lot of them really like it. So if it's used for something like that, it can be quite good. And it could also be good as well for like out of school, like athletics clubs, running clubs, things like that.
That's right.
Like, not just involved with the school, like Doug's has mentioned.
Yeah.
And it could generally be of benefit to Netherthong as a village. Or like even for like adults, people who want to go for a run.
Yes.
And so they want to know what distance they're running, or they don't want to be running like on grass where it's horrible and that, and wet and muddy. So it could be good for things like that.
Thank you. The next one is Honley People's Recreation, which
Yeah.
is... Yes, Kath?
Judith's got her hand up.
Sorry, Judith.
Just that last one, it was the Friends of Netherthong, wasn't it, that applied, and not the school itself.
That's right.
So that's a different kettle of fish, because it's the Friends of Netherthong school.
Yeah.
So I should be, I mean, I know I live in Netherthong, but I should be mindful of allowing that, because it isn't actually the school that's applied. It's
Well, I think that makes it better, because I think we have difficulty approving things when a school is applying that is funded by. I mean, when I was chair of Marsden Juniors, the Parent Teacher Association, or I can't remember whether they're called PTA or Friends or whatever.
Yeah.
And they raised money for several things that were beyond what Kirklees was prepared, able, whatever, to fund. So I think we can be sympathetic to applications from Friends of Schools, more sympathetic to them than we can to the school, which is supposed to be applying to Kirklees, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's why we don't fund the schools, but we can fund the Parent Teacher Association or the Friends.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
But we can't fund the schools, supposedly.
Yeah.
Because that's the education services.
Yeah. The next one is Honley People's Recreation. They want an outdoor gym in Honley Rec on or in Jagger Lane. It's a declaration of interest, so we don't know the details, and they're asking for money towards it. And they need 20,000. We think we should give them the 5,000. It seems to us a community asset. River Home Connections have got 2, and there was one which was money for the wild space, which we didn't want to give anymore because we've already given just short of 5,000. But the river footpath from Digley to Honley, we felt we should contribute towards, and we suggested giving it £5,000.
Digley to Honley.
Digley to Honley is it's part of it, but £5,000 won't pay for the whole thing. The idea is to get the river home open to the public. Tom?
Yeah, so it looks like they've got a couple of projects on the go at the same time, and they're both needing budget for both of them. It just seems like if we're giving money to like one project and give one to the other project a different year, it's when will they be completed? Like, if we don't know how much money they need to raise for it, like we're giving 5,000 to the first project, they still need to raise another 16,000. It's just.
I think they've nearly got what they need for the wild space.
Yeah.
It's on the agenda for council, and I think they're only 1,000 short now.
Yeah, I think they do really good things, the group, but I kind of think maybe it might just be better to focus on one project at a time, get one completed, then move on to the next one, rather than asking for grants for another project, which they haven't.
Well, remember, this was an expression of interest for the next financial year, so they might be doing exactly that. Yeah. I've got Sean, then Mary.
Yeah, I've seen the fundraising website, and I think they are very close, about £1,000 or £1,500 off to what seems like a really, really good project. And I can understand where you're coming from, Tom, but I think, I think you've got to judge each project on its merits, haven't you? And they look like, I certainly know they're an organisation who do complete their projects, don't they?
Mm.
Mary?
I think it's a really good decision to decide to give or to suggest perhaps we might give 5,000 for the Riverside Path. I mean, the path does already exist. I've walked it several times. It is an appalling condition in many places. So, I mean, £5,000 will go somewhere to improve it, but not that far, I don't think. But I think that's a sound decision.
I think Tom, partly in answer to the point you raised, I think they're likely to come back to us for many years to come. I mean, opening up a footpath from Digley to Home Firth, it's not going to happen with £5,000 or in 1 year, is it?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm very much in favour of the project, and I know exactly where it's going to be from Diggle, because I've walked on that bit myself, and yeah, it's very muddy. So I am in favour of it. I suppose I'm kind of just a bit like this, because we don't have much information in front of us, so I am in favour of it.
Okay. Then we come on to 2 applications from Hayded Band, and we were minded to give to one and not to the other. We didn't want to give to the coaching training fees, partly because we don't pay for people, but we did feel that the piano was quite important. It is, according to Rachel, the only place between here and Wakefield that Home Valley Youngster, or the only place you can do your level 5 exam or something if you have a piano. Or
I'm not sure you're. Yeah, I don't think I knew that much about it, but I know that the nearest place is in Armitage Bridge that you can go for your exams at the moment, whereas historically it used to be that you could go to Hayded. I don't know what level you have to be, but I know my children have gone to Armitage Bridge for exams. So I mean, if we're running short on money, I would suggest that we maybe don't fund the entire cost of the piano, but make a contribution towards it, because I would hope they could get some funding from any, I don't know, there must be musical grant schemes, particularly in the current climate, to try and encourage culture to survive this horrible period. But I certainly think it would be good to support them in some way, because it would be good to have an exam centre that's in the Home Valley to support our tradition of music and brass bands, etc.
Tom?
I'm sorry if I'm being really picky, but is this, I'm not against this as a grant application, but is this a community asset?
Well, we felt it was, because all children studying music, it's not just kids who are members of Hayded Band. They would go in there and take their various grades and exams and things. So we felt that it was. If you don't, I mean, we're open to argument.
Yeah. It's just like, it just depends how you interpret it, doesn't it, I think, but I'm not against it.
Yeah. Doug's? You mute.
Maybe this might have been one of the meetings I missed, I don't recall this one. I mean, I think that in answer to Tom, if we think the provision of, say, a bowling green or a sports court is a critical asset to do sports, then arguably the provision of a piano is still a capital asset, isn't it, that you could sell for money?
Yeah.
So I think if our restriction is around capital assets, then I think a valuable piano that will last for hopefully a couple of generations, I think it does count. So I'd be relatively comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting near the end now. That was the end of the ones that Kath and Rachel and I saw. You didn't miss a meeting, Doug. It was just the vice chair and chair having a pre-meeting with the clerk. There are 3 more: Brockhill School, Walday Community Centre and Cartworth Cricket Club, which hadn't been submitted. I think with those, the Brockhill School is just a school thing, and it is coming from the school, not the Friends or the Parent Teachers Association. So my feeling is that we probably should say sorry but no. The Wooldale Community Centre is a community thing, and my feeling is we should offer them the 5,000. They need to raise 20,000. And the Cartworth Cricket Club, again, doesn't look very community to me. It seems to be for cricket club members. Now they may come back with an application that says we do more for the community than the whole of Kirklees ever has in the history of the world. But
they have given quite a lot of detail on their form about all the other groups that use the pavilion, not just the cricket club.
Right. I mean, what we were, I mean, we could give them some money. We could give them a couple of grand. Again, refer them to the Bright Green Trust. Tom?
Yeah, I think with other cricket clubs like Hornley, Home Bridge, we've given them funds in the past. So maybe like we're not very like wanting to give them money again because we've given them money in the past, but because we have given other sporting groups money, we haven't given Cartworth any money in my time on the council. I don't think so.
No.
I think we should give them some. I think we should give them support, maybe even 3,000. Just give them,
Right.
give them some support towards it, just to be fair. like we gave Homebridge 5,000 this year, and Honley something similar as well. So maybe even more than that. But like, yeah, I think we need to be fair to them.
Sean?
It seems like cricket clubs in general do quite well out of the parish council, don't they? Do we not get many applications from other sport? I know we get bowling, but
what you're looking at is all the expressions of interest we've had. So, I mean, yeah, the cricket clubs obviously communicated with each other. I mean, we'll get it. And as you say, the bowling clubs are creeping in. It's going to happen. But where they are genuinely community stuff, it's perfectly appropriate for them to ask us for money. Okay, now, if you add those up, this is total is £100. It's 34,550 before you add, say, 5,000 for Wooldale and 3,000 for, now I did myself a little spreadsheet here, and I got our grand total, and I looked at Rich's note, the RFO note, and if you add all of those up, it comes to roughly 39,000, just short of 40,000. It might be just over if we give them. And then what we've already, and then we've also got the things like, so there's 40,000 for that, call it for the sake of argument. Then we've got Rich's estimate of 66,000 for the stuff. I'm talking now about next year's budget. Remember, 66,000 for the Honley Library, Civic Hall, and now you can take out of that 15 for other community assets because we've just done that. That gets you to 40 some. So we're talking about a grand total. Let me get to the bottom of my page. Oh no. Of 70,000 pounds, not the 66 Rich is talking about. Because although Honley Library, sadly, it's delayed again. It's going to be December cabinet, not November. And it may be that we don't pay them anything this financial year, but it is also quite likely that they will need more than the 15 we've already got scheduled for them, because the roof is actually, there's water dripping through the roof.
No.
And Kirklees are not going to do it. And the roof lets heat out. It's got a glass panel, so it wants money spending on it to be warmer, as well as letting light in. And so we'll certainly have the 15 that we already are expecting, and it's quite likely we'll want more. So I reckon what we want is in the region of 70 odd, rather than the amount Rich was talking about. Now, there seemed to be money in reserve, according to Rich's note, if you look at it. There seems to be money in reserve, not specifically allocated to task, but the council has got the difference between Rich's estimate of what we need to apply for and mine. So we wouldn't be asking to raise the precept or anything like that. I mean, there are the funds. It's whether we feel we should ask for that bit more, which is, I think, about 10 grand actually, and give the amounts we've just discussed roughly, or whether we should go through that list and lop about 10 grand off it. Doug's. You mute again.
Sorry. I'm just a bit confused about the figures that you're using, because in Rich's reports, he says that the amended budget I'm assuming this year, I'm looking at page 1 of his report. So we had 66,000, but in reality, we actually had 75.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming now we're actually on the agenda item to talk about this budget issue, which has got all the supporting papers with it. I mean, in principle, I support what you say. I think if there's money in reserves that, in some cases, they won't be used, like like the elections budget, legal advice budget. There's some budgets that are underspent and aren't going to spend. And
I think
we should
elections, we
that.
put some, I think with elections, you put it
Yeah, that's
aside every year.
Yeah, but
You
some of the,
always put it aside.
but it's things like the youth facilities, for example, that money, and some of these things we're talking about effectively are youth facilities anyway. So, I think we have got a case to make on that underspend.
Well, at the foot of, I put notes on Rich's note, and Honley Library, I'm guesstimating it'll be more like 30 grand than 15.
Yeah.
On the other community projects, if we include Wooldale and the other one we've just looked at, we're looking at a total of around 39.40, not 32. If we look at the public lettable space, it's going to be more than £1,000 for a glass door. And where Rich has got 66, I get it to 88, and that's short actually of something we agreed today, because you suggested more for one of the ones I was getting at. And that means we would be asking for 88.5 or 89, and that would mean no other grants other than those expressions of interest we've already received. That would have no contingency. I mean, the council will have contingency money. I'm talking about the CASC budget. And I get it to just short, around about the 90 mark, if we do all the things that are like.
Can I just say something, Pat?
Yeah,
I might have got the wrong end of the stick, but when I talked about the budgets with Rich, got the distinct impression that we might have something like £30,000 underspend this year, that we could meet some of these this year before April, and therefore he was saying you don't need to put them all onto next year's budget, because there's things like the library, and we have to use the budget that's here this year, or it goes into
we may not be able to, because the asset transfer may not happen before the end of the financial year. It's not even going to...
We've got 15,000 that hasn't been spent. We've also got 15,000 in reserves for the library. So we have already, we can't touch that. He said, don't move reserves, but you can use the money you haven't spent in this year's budget.
Yeah, and I've allowed for that. But I've said there'll be the 15,000 that won't be spent this year, but will be spent next year. But there is probably going to be another 15,000 that they will need that we will need to spend when we first buy the property. I'm guessing at 15,000. I don't know how much a roof is. It might be 40,000.
But we can't start guessing, Pat. We've got to have some firm evidence, because they might. We are saying, well, I'm guessing at 15 or maybe even more. I mean, it could come up at 100,000.
Yes, it could. And we don't know until it happens. All I'm saying is, if we are trying to estimate, which we are at the moment, we're not saying anything formal or concrete. If we're trying to estimate the budget we want to ask for, there will be more for Honley Library than just the 15,000 we have already discussed. There will be substantially more. That's all I can...
So what sort of increase on the precept are you talking about now?
I'm not talking about an increase on the precept at all. As I said earlier, the council, A, we may have underspent, and B, in the general council reserves, there is some money. There is money left over. We do not need to raise the precept. Nobody is suggesting raising the precept. It's not even on the agenda. All I'm saying is, when we ask for a budget, I think we need to ask, and I will send these numbers out. I'll work them out in more detail. I think we're needing to ask for a budget that is bigger than the one Rich is suggesting. Rachel?
Yeah, I think we need to sort of segregate the kind of the budget of what we expect to spend next financial year and what money is there that we can use. And I think to be honest, we need to go back to Rich and say, right, we've gone through all these expressions of interest. We're minded to support them to the tune of whatever the total was that you said, about 40,000. Arguably, we need a little bit of leeway to allow for the fact there might be some other things that come in, so we may want to bump that up by a couple of thousand or whatever. But then say, you know, we're expecting to spend circa, let's say, 45,000 on other community assets. We also think that the library, when it comes on stream, will have 15,000 running costs, but is very likely to have in the region of 15,000 of asset costs to go with it if it's approved. And then if there's anything, this is also, we had that presentation at the last CASC meeting from the Civic Hall. So they actually highlighted a few projects that could come forward in the next financial year, which I think went up to something like 30,000 or something, but I can't remember what it was. But there were certain different things anyway. But it's almost, to my mind, we need to go back and say, right, these are the things we think we would like to spend. Actually, are any of these things that we could spend from this year's budget because we're likely to have an underspend? And if they're not, what other options are there for where we could take money from other elements that haven't been spent? Before then, there's the whole discussion of, right, when we've got all the different committees with their wish lists, actually are some of these supporting the same things? So arguably some of the climate emergency funds, you could argue that some of the things, if we're saying we're going to support climate emergency elements, maybe some of the budget that notionally would have gone under climate emergency would effectively say, well, actually that should probably sit under that bit of cash. So I think it's more sort of saying, ideally, how much would we like to spend and what would we like to support?
And then ask Rich where we can get it from.
Exactly. And if the answer is the only way of achieving that, those aspirations, is either to take money from other areas which the council may not want to do, or raise the precept, which again the council may not wish to do. But at least there's the options there, rather than us cutting our cloth to a budget that is based on what was last time. There's a whole expression of interest.
I agree.
And help provide a vision of what we'd like to do ideally.
Yeah.
It might be then that we have to ramp it down and say, actually, we can't give a maximum of 5,000 to all these organisations. We have to top out at 3 because there's too many we want to support. Whatever.
Kath?
Yes, I don't think we can increase the precept yet, because we've got to think about, with COVID, there's people, without money, and I don't think the population would want the precept to go up at the moment for cricket clubs and what, and yeah.
Tom?
I agree with that.
I agree with Kath, but I do think that with the funds which will pass over, we're not going to spend this year, we will have a significant surplus in the CASC budget for this year, which if we manage it well, we can provide money for the other community assets, and as well for the other projects which are ongoing, like Holmley Library. If we had 15,000 left over from last year, 15,000 this year for Holmley Library, part of me thinks, well, that 15,000 left over from last year can go towards the initial repairs and works that need to be done, and then the 15,000 for this year can go on running costs. But I think we should try and keep a surplus in there for Holmley Library, because it will be for any horror stories, any things like that. We need to have a bit of a surplus behind for our own community assets, to make sure that if there is a rainy day, something really bad happens, we've got some funds to kind of do things with it. So I think it's important for us to have some kind of a surplus for it, but at the same time, we've got plenty of movable space with the money left over for doing money for the other works. It might just be worth, I can't remember what the Civic Hall said at the last meeting, but just them kind of giving us an idea of how much money they think they might need from us for the next year for their projects.
They did that. Sorry, they did do that in the meeting, so it'll be Judith to talk to.
Yeah.
Can I suggest then that I go off work this out in more detail in the light of things we agreed in principle tonight. And can this be minuted, not as approved? Can we find a slightly woollier word, Liz, than approved for the minutes of this? That I go off, work out further details on this, and I discuss with Liz and Rich, look, here is what I think, or I can send you all an email saying, here, look, here's what I think we need. Don't worry about where it's coming from, and then we'll ask Rich where it can come from, and try and get that done before the next meeting. Doug?
I remember to unmute. I think the form of words is something around what Mary said, because effectively what we've done is ask for expressions of interest almost as a two-phase process.
Yeah.
So we can say to them, we've considered their initial expressions, and
yes.
we want them to explore some of those further with full applications, which doesn't say obviously that we will support it, but it says they've effectively got through that first
Yeah.
phase. So I think if we describe these as we've considered expressions of interest, then we're minded to pursue further
Mindful.
examination of application, something like that.
Thank you.
Sorry, Liz, that wasn't very
Mindful.
helpful.
Minded too, I think he said.
We've got also to think about when the next meeting is, which is quite a long way ahead. It's March. So I feel that we should feedback positively to the people we have said we'd like to give the money. Ask them to put in proper grant applications for those items. Obviously,
You and I can go through and we'll give them specific guidance so
Yeah.
they know what we're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think that, if we have those back by February, that's the time when we look at what we haven't spent this year, and then we can make a final decision about what we can afford to pay for this year and what we're going to carry on till the next financial year.
And meanwhile, I'll do a summary and deal with Rich and Liz about where it could come from, and if we are actually asking for more money, or if in the end it all gets wired from A, B and C and Rich makes it disappear.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. I think that's the end of the meeting, isn't it?
Yes.
We've got through a lot. Thank you very much indeed.